Okay, so usually on this explainer, we take these massive, sprawling documents and, distill them down for you. But today we're doing something totally different and, honestly, incredibly unique. We are going to analyze a singular, incredibly brief historical artifact. Literally just a handful of words. But as you'll see, we're going to uncover just how much weight, architecture, and frankly, implied power these few words carry. We are basically going to deconstruct the very framing of ancient authority. Sound good? Let's jump right in.
All right, take a look at the text. Believe it or not, this is the absolute entirety of our source material today. Just this. Excerpts from Justice in the Halls of Hammurabi, Hammurabi's Court. That is the tiny, profound fragment that we'll be slowly deconstructing. Now, I know it's so easy to just glance right past titles and headings, right? We usually treat them as just doorways to the main content. But what happens when that doorway is literally all you have? You really start to notice how intricately it was carved. So we're going to treat this text not just as a label, but as a literal map.
So the really crucial point here is observing just how much structural implication and spatial language is packed into just these few specific words, excerpts from Justice in the Halls of Hammurabi. I mean, look at the sheer economy of language here. We aren't just being handed a topic, we are being placed inside a very specific physical environment. The author isn't just dropping facts on us. They're constructing a physical space right inside our minds using nothing but text. It's wild. In a way, these are words of absolute authority. They set the stage and demand our respect before a single rule or law is even read out loud.
To really understand how this works, we've got to begin by examining the very first conceptual pillar presented in our text, which is justice. Now, by definition, justice is a totally abstract concept. It's this high-minded ideal of moral rightness, fairness, the proper administration of law. It's an idea, right? You can't touch justice. You literally cannot hold it in your hand. But ancient rulers, they absolutely knew that for an abstract ideal to actually govern a massive society, well, it requires a physical vessel to be realized and enforced. It basically needs to be dragged down from the realm of ideas and planted firmly into the physical world of men.
And wow, this just brilliantly illustrates the spatial language our source uses. Notice how the text doesn't just say, the Justice of Hammurabi. No, it specifically says justice in the halls. Now, halls are these huge corridors or imposing rooms used for public administration. So justice here, it's not just floating around in the ether. It is housed. It's contained within literal, imposing architecture. The text uses the word halls to give weight, echo, and real physical permanence to the otherwise fleeting concept of fairness. Think about it. You are meant to feel incredibly small when you walk into a grand hall.
Right, so if the halls represent that grand, imposing outer architecture, the court is the operational center. It's the actual formalized place where that legal authority is actively exercised. And this is key. Our source text attaches a very specific name to it, Hammurabi's court. So that abstract ideal of justice we just talked about, it has now been completely captured and localized entirely under the banner of one specific historic individual.
Let's visually juxtapose this core relationship. On one side, we have the totally intangible, universally desired ideal, justice. And then on the other side, we have the very tangible, highly localized authority, Hammurabi's court. The absolute brilliance of our source text's title is exactly how it anchors the abstract to the physical. It's essentially telling the reader that, hey, if you are seeking the abstract concept of justice, you absolutely must submit to the physical authority of the court.
By breaking down the phrase this way, we can actually mentally map out a clear spatial journey. Just look at how the words guide you inward. Step 1, you approach the halls, that grand, intimidating outer structure. Step 2, you proceed deeper into the court, the specific, formalized room of authority. And finally, step 3, within that court, you encounter justice, the ultimate administration of the law. The text literally walks your mind from the outside world straight into the inner sanctum of Hammurabi's power. It's just a completely masterful use of descriptive hierarchy.
Now, I want to draw your attention back to the very first word of our source text, excerpts. This specific framing, calling it an excerpt, implies this massive, unseen structure that we are only getting the tiniest glimpse of. Because what is an excerpt? It's a fragment. It's just a single piece cut from a much, much larger fabric. Just by using that one single word, the text establishes that the actual laws and decrees of Hammurabi's court are vast, comprehensive, and potentially overwhelming. And us, we are only being permitted to see a very small selection.
And honestly, that brings us to a really fascinating realization about what we don't have, the unseen logic.
Because we only possess the title and the venue in our source text today, the actual legal logic and the specific mechanics operating inside these halls, well, they remain entirely shielded from our view. We know the architecture, we know the authority, we know the intended output, which is justice. But the actual codes, the weighing of evidence, the granular legal logic of Hammurabi, all of that remains hidden behind the closed doors of the court we just intellectually walked up to.
So, despite its sheer brevity, this tiny artifact uncovered a grand spatial journey and the literal architecture of ancient authority from just a handful of words. But as we wrap up, I really want to leave you with this ultimate provocative question to ponder on your own. If this grand, imposing structure is the court, what actual form does its justice take? What are the unseen echoes happening within Hammurabi's walls? It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. It's been a blast, and I will see you next time.